Hi, my name is Alejandro Pérez Pérez, and this is the AI Coffee Podcast. Every 2 weeks, you will have one episode regarding one disruptive aspect of technology and artificial intelligence for the time you drink a cup of coffee. Today, we have a very inspirational guest. His name is Garik. Welcome, Garik.
Hey, Alejandro. Glad to be here.
Garik Tate is an AI futurist speaker, a serial entrepreneur, and a product development coach specializing in increasing the value and profitability of companies through AI development, hiring elite talent, and automation. He is the CEO and co-founder of Valhalla team, a company that accelerates humanity toward a sustainable future by amplifying the impact of proposed driven tech companies. So, wow, what a long presentation, Garik. Let's start like knowing more about your personal story. That I think it's very deep, as I already said. So, can you maybe start sharing with us the journey into this very interesting field of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I'll give the long of the short. So, my journey began in Seattle, Washington, in the USA, and I grew up nearby on a little island called Woodby Island, and I grew up in a very entrepreneurial family, and there was rises and falls and dramatic things while I was still growing up. But just as I graduated, my brother and my father were uh, putting their heads together to start a new company, and I jumped in both feet with them, and we started up a publishing company. So we published books, magazines, and that's still actually thriving and running along. And now we've hired a CEO that runs it far better than we ever could. But that was about 11 years ago, and about 10 years ago, we decided we wanted to move with where the team was at, because the team was not in Seattle. The team was primarily in the Philippines, and so we wanted to move over here. So I was 19. Actually, no, I was just about to turn 19, still 18. Moved out to the Philippines, and have been growing companies out here ever since. And publishing is still going along well, but actually my main passion is in software and in AI. So I also have a software development company that deals with AI and automation called Valhalla, and that's been around for about 6 years. And our first project was ever was in AI. So been very passionate about this field for as long as I can remember.
It's actually interesting. I didn't know that you started with publications and books, and it's strange that you have done this path from the, let's say, physical materials to AI. So quite an interesting path. And what are your for you the main like conclusions, thoughts that you have after having done this path from this first company, this first work that you did until the process that you are doing now?
Yeah, I think that the name of the game when it comes to entrepreneurship is still people. So it's about growing a team, leading a team. No matter how good you are or how smart you are, you're still just one person. And so you really need to tap into collective intelligence and be leading a team. And that applies whether your team uses AI or not.
Yeah, so let's talk more about your AI passion, because you describe yourself as an AI strategist. And I was really curious about this role because, well, it's not. I don't think if it's even a role. It's maybe more a passion, right? Like you have. So, what challenges have you encountered while working with AI?
Yeah. So I'd say the biggest challenge is what can you do with it to actually impact the bottom line of your business. There's a saying, he who has a hammer, the whole world looks like his nail. So that's not a good thing. If you just say, hey, where can we add an AI? Probably being motivated by FOMO. I'm sure, Alejandro, you've seen this quite a few times of people. We're AI driven. And it's like, well, first of all, are you? And secondly, even if you were, like, what does that matter? So you need to you can't be driven by FOMO. You have to know the problem you're solving is a right problem. And I have just two criteria for what is a good problem to use AI in, and that's, does a problem have clear inputs and outputs? Are those inputs and outputs accessible? And secondly, does the process have more than one example? Can we, run a lot of data through this AI to confirm if it's actually working or not? But if your problem is something that you can apply those criteria to, then bam, AI is probably going to remove a big constraint in your business. And so, as an AI strategy consultant, I kind of see it as my job to go through a business and see if that works. And if it's not the constraint, if that's not the types of problems you're suffering, well, then it's probably not a good fit.
Yes, I agree with you that most of AI projects now are driven by FOMO, as you said. That's a very typical thing, and most of the problems that are nowadays faced through AI, they could be faced maybe using other technologies or even statistics sometimes. So, can you maybe describe what's AI for you? Because I think it's a very vague definition, somehow, and I would like a definition from yourself.
I guess my more practical approach to it is that it's a component or a class of components that apply to different products, particularly where that product is capturing some narrow form of intelligence. So, and we are trying to get to AGI. We'll see how long that takes, but right now it's primarily narrow problems. But it's the question is, if you don't, if you have a top down protocol or like an algorithm, and that's how you solve a problem, that's not AI. That's just following a set of instructions. But if you don't have clear instructions, but you still have a problem, and AI solves it, that's a new class of product, and that's a bottom up approach as opposed to a top down approach.
Mhm. Yes, I think it's a very good point, and I saw already. I mean, many times, many products that are not even related to data. So, I mean, very complex to be solved by AI. For example, I remember once I saw some sensors that are apparently were using AI, but it's a sensoring thing. So, I think we should talk more what's AI, because even if it's now a trendy definition, maybe most of the times it's wide. So yeah, very very important, that one. So another point, Garik, is that when I was looking at you, at your description in LinkedIn, and all the data I saw from you, I discovered that you also define yourself as a public speaker, and I think it's also
Yes,
a very
sir.
important point, because, well, you are participating now in this podcast, but in other podcasts and other programs I already saw you. So I would like also to ask you a maybe more personal question related to imposter syndrome. Have you ever felt imposter while speaking about even something that you are passionate about?
I used to have a lot more imposter syndrome when I first started the software company. My background is in marketing and operations, and so taking the plunge and saying, no, like software is my passion. This is what I want to spend time on. Uh, you know, I had to work with developers when I couldn't write code, so there was definitely a lot of overcoming challenges when it came to that. That was 6 years ago. Fast forward to today, I would say that not so much. And I think the biggest thing that got rid of imposter syndrome for me was watching very carefully other people playing in the space. And I think that if you are, imposter syndrome is intrinsically a narrative story where your ego is pointed internally. But if your soul is not in your ego pointed internally, but instead your soul is in your eyes and you're pointed externally, you're going to be in a very different position. It's very hard to focus on two things at once. And continuously, one thing I love so much about having, working in software for so long and working with other companies is that the IT division gets access to like everything. We really get a good snapshot of the dirty laundry, and realizing how many people from the outside seem like they had their shit together and absolutely do not, was very uh, it was definitely a confidence booster. And realizing you didn't have to be perfect, but you did have to add value. But seeing what other people were doing, and kind of benchmarking yourself, imposter syndrome kind of faded away after that. And I think that applies in with my expertise in AI as much as it does in software. And I feel very lucky that I got those lessons earlier on in my career.
Mhm. Yes, actually, well, you come from the United States, where it's more often and popular to do this public speaking. But for example, in
We're a
Europe,
very theatrical culture. We're very theatrical.
yeah, but that's true. That for example, in Europe, I see, for example, here in Spain, is very not. It's not the case. We are not used to speak in public, and I think it's very important, and it also creates a lot of value for you, because it, as for example what you're doing, we are starting like a collaboration now. We are talking, we are meeting each other, and I think that's an important thing, and you only are able to do it if you expose yourself a little bit, so very
Yeah.
important that. Mhm.
Actually, I'll give one quick tip to anyone listening to this. You know, being a if you want to be if you want to focus on your networking skills, going to events and conferences is an incredible uh, way to do that. It is a whole other ball game when you are a speaker at the conference. When you're a speaker at the conference, all of a sudden you are um, significantly closer to the hub rather than the spokes, and it's much easier to network with folks that are, let's say, at the echelon that you're aiming for. And it's definitely a pretty big life hack. Right now, actually, this month, I've been invited to speak at two different conferences. So this month's going to be a little bit more hectic. I'm spoken at a couple others this year. And your name gets out there. You have to add value. You have to add significant value in the content you put out. But it's I think maybe easier than people think. And if they don't know where to start, I would say definitely joining Toastmasters. That's a organization that's in almost every single city. It's very affordable, and it's an organization that's meant to turn you into a public speaker, and it works fucking well. Like, it works really, really well. So if you don't know where to start, I would definitely recommend joining Toastmasters, and you're probably going to bring your networking skills to the next level if you really apply it and try network in those conferences you actually speak at.
Hmm. Thank you for the tip. I think it's important to know also from you your experience and how it worked in your case. But now let's move a little bit to the main topic of our conversation, our episode, right? So as you are the co-founder of Valhalla team, I think the main thing to start with would be if you could explain a little bit what do you do there, and what are the basis of your work.
Yeah, absolutely. So Valhalla was started initially as a product design and product development company, specifically with kind of a unique spin on it. So we have a lot of expertise when it comes to building products from scratch and designing them. But our core business model is around assembling the team that is going to build it. So we saw a lot of companies that were just straight up agencies that were paid to do a job, and they did the job and it either succeeded or it failed. And then other companies were purely butts in seats, where they just were the employer of record, and they hired somebody but they didn't do anything to manage them. And there wasn't really, and both of those have a lot of problems. So we founded Valhalla from the standpoint of providing better consulting and better perspective than most any other company out there for our clients. But the core model is that you will get the team that will actually execute against the product that we help design. So we offer design services and also team building services. And so, to close a point on AI, recently we've been have been going through a shift, focusing more on consulting businesses to augment their systems and services with AI in the way I was saying before. Of it has to be the right problem, but if you find the right problem, you can really remove the constraints from your business, which we think it's particularly useful for businesses that want to exit. So if an owner wants to cash out on their business and actually sell it, spending a few months looking at their business to find low-hanging fruit to upgrade can make a lot of sense to get your growth up and then sell at a higher multiple. So sorry, that's a little bit of a long-winded answer, but there's different pieces to that. So that's where we're at now.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting. Like you are talking about people and about teams that I think it's maybe not so often. Usually, companies that are more or less similar to yours are more focused on projects. So it's very important also this perspective. And I'm really curious also about how you hire talent, because in your specific case, I think talent and people are really important. So what are for you the key elements, the key like things, thoughts that you have in mind when you hire someone?
Well, I think the honest truth that probably gets us better talent than most is we treat it a lot like having a client. So just as a aggressive, I think this, Alejandro, but like when you hire someone, it's kind of like having a prospect or a client. Like you have to kind of sell them, especially if you want them to bring their best self forward. You're selling them on your organization. Um, I think a lot of companies would benefit from thinking of themselves as ultimately really just a two separate sales funnels. One sales funnel is how they get great clients, and the other sales funnel is how they get a great team to then service those clients. And then there's this little part in the middle of like how you actually deliver the value, and all that tiny stuff like operations and fulfillment and systems and stuff. But really taking in the perspective that your team is your best asset, and your clients is how you monetize that asset, and recruitment is therefore like it's worth putting in the same amount of attention as you put in your sales. So we get really quite aggressive with our timelines of how fast we interview, how well we take care of them, answering their questions, checking in with applicants, making sure they don't slip through the cracks, making sure they're comfortable. Just a lot of steps to that. So I think partially it's not so much qualifying the applicant as much as it is making sure that when you have found the right qualified applicant, that you fucking hire them.
And in your opinion, do you think that it would be different if the company is an AI based company?
When it comes to AI, I remember this one. I forgot exactly which code framework, but it was the inventor of some particular. I think it was some Python framework. It wasn't Django. Django is far too old. But let's say it was a framework like that. And he had found a job ad that said, "We're looking for an XYZ developer, and must have 2 years of experience." And he posted on his Twitter, and he said, "Well, damn, I just invented this a year and a half ago, so I guess I don't qualify." And it it shows that we're in a cutting edge industry here, and hiring learners and intelligent people that can problem solve, hiring problem solvers and problem solvers that fit well with your culture matters more than hiring domain experts. Um, and I think that gets thrown around a lot. Um, Probably gets thrown around too much because Silicon Valley has really been on that cutting edge for so long that's now become common wisdom. We're like, no, there's quite a few jobs out there where you got to hire the domain experts. And this is not an omni truth. It's not an all encompassing truth. But when you're on a cutting edge, damn well, it definitely is. So I'm hiring learners. And so a lot of our questions is just, what's the last thing you studied? How did you learn it? Do you work out? Do you take care of yourself? Do you take care of your body? Do you take care of your brain? Do you meditate? A lot of our questions is just digging into if they're a lifelong learner or not.
Hmm. Really interesting, and it's funny that I also saw it sometimes that people are demanding profiles with more experience that even the products are. So that happens often, and
Yeah.
in our world, in computer science and IT, it's very often. So, and a piece of advice for the recruiters that are maybe listening to this: be aware that maybe the products are maybe more recent that you expect they are. So yeah. So let's move now to the automation, because automation is also a very important part of your services, as I said before. So can you provide some examples of products, companies that have been improved somehow by automation?
Yeah, and actually, I can share it with the recruitment, because that's one area that made a big difference, in one of the companies we were helping. So this was a company that, their biggest constraint was hiring. They uh, could get plenty of clients, but they couldn't get a big enough team to support them, and they were definitely a premium service. So that meant that they had to have premium people, and that made it even harder. So we looked at their business and asked ourselves where were the bottlenecks in it, and we found that it wasn't they weren't getting enough applicants. They were getting plenty of applicants. It's that they weren't processing them fast enough. And so, it was actually, I don't think I've ever told this story quite this way, but the way that we actually solved the problem was we asked where were they spending the most time. Um, and turned out they were spending like 3/4 of their time at the very beginning of the funnel, and they still weren't processing enough people. So we just put our brains together and said, can we automate steps of this process? And actually, turned out they were doing twice as much work as necessary, because um, they were qualifying people both when they sent the email and when they got the resume. But you only need to do it when you get the resume, so just always forward the emails. So little things like that weren't even automation. Then we went through, we automated some of the messaging so that when people applied, um, we experimented with using ChatGPT to, automatically read their message and then write responses, in order to deal with just the raw volume that they dealt with. So that's an example of using automation with AI, and was able to triple the number of people they were able to hire, per month. So, I can give more specific examples if you want to, but that's the long and the short.
I think it's very, very clear that, I mean, in these specific examples, you help people actually by using AI. So a very interesting example. But let's also talk about ethical aspects, because, well, you mentioned that you were using ChatGPT, for example, to
To make more jobs, not to
quantize.
take jobs.
No, but that's a very good point. But even though I think ChatGPT would like maybe be biased somehow, so maybe at the end of the day, maybe the hiring process would be biased as well. So how do you manage that?
That's an excellent question. One thing I don't think that we can lose sight of is, especially in the West, a large part about what makes Western civilization as good as it is when it's doing well, at least, is it very much values accountability. If something goes wrong, we want to know who to blame, and then we want to put in consequences. Now, sometimes that's not the best way to proceed. It's not good to like point fingers. You just gotta solve the problem. And sometimes we blame the wrong people, and sometimes that distracts us. And there's some downside to it. But ultimately, I think that if we look at the alternative countries that maybe don't have that level of, valuing accountability, we're doing all right. Like, it seems like it serves us and the bottom line. And I think it's really important that we maintain that. You can't hold an AI accountable. You can only hold people accountable. And so, really making sure that we're not confusing the AI, um, as autonomous. It's an extension of what we do, and put we have to own own the results.
Mhm.
Um, yeah.
Yes, I agree with this point of view. Actually, I like to see AI more like a copilot. That's actually a very also trendy name for many products. But I like to see this point of view. Like it's someone like something that is helping you to provide your service, but you are as a human also looking at how it works, maybe also changing something that the AI maybe do incorrectly. So it's good to also keep human at the end of the day, right? But
There's a fun actually example of that is, there was a cancer, um, pr- diagnosis process where we
Mhm.
eventually got to the point where AI reading the scans and the images could predict if it was cancerous or not with I think it was like a 93% accuracy, while humans could predict it at only a 90% accuracy. So it was a moment of, well, shit, I guess it's better than us. Like pack up, we're good. But the punchline was that no, the thing that got like 99% accuracy was when it was co-piloted, when it was the AI and the human both looking at the same image and then holding each other accountable.
Mhm. For me, that's the perfect point, actually. Yes, and maybe also, I mean, as you said, maybe there are examples that provide this data, that this evaluation, that this is maybe the right point of view. But I also, well, I mentioned already, I think, a couple of episodes ago. But well, there is an example in, I think it was in the Netherlands, that some subsidies or something like that were done completely automatized by an AI algorithm, and I mean they were biased. I think it was because of the name of people. There were their way. I mean, they provide the subsidy or not. So that's a way to bias the real data, right? So how important it is to have a human looking at this, and maybe if a person, let's say a qualified person, is able to see the results and say, okay, this is not working. Let's change the way it does before everything is maybe creating some mistakes. So yeah, that's an important point. And do you have other examples of how you use AI in other processes to help to automatize processes?
Uh, like an example of putting using AI in automating a process, like removes a constraint.
Yes, yeah, it's yeah, that's something like that.
Perfect.
Hmm.
So uh, the framework that we approach it from is we try to find the biggest constraint inside of a business. What is the thing that's holding the business back the most? Because if let's say you have a sales process that involves mass messaging and then uh, uh, you know a sales letter and then a sales call, and your conversion rate is from the letter to the landing page to the call is like 10%, 5%, 10%. Well, if you could add 5% to any one of those, you want to add it to the to the lower number, which that would make the biggest difference. So you find the part of the business that has the lowest throughput, and you ask yourself, can we attack that? And so that's where we always start. What is the constraint? What is the thing holding the business back? In the example I gave before, it was where are they spending most of their time in a typical day? And we did time tracking for that and create a timesheet. And then we ask ourselves, is that an area we can add in AI or automation? And automation is pretty easy to tell if you can add that in or not. Once you, and I encourage everyone to look at tools like Zapier. There's a lot of, they're very easy to pick up. They're very easy to learn. Um, the question of is this good fit for AI can be a little bit more challenging, but the guiding light there is does this does this problem have clear inputs and outputs?
Hmm.
AI cannot take in the full context. It doesn't know everything the human knows, so you have to boil it down to just the inputs and outputs. But if you can do that, and that's often pretty hard, but if you can do that, and that you can with some creativity, if you can do that, then AI can solve it. And then you've removed a huge constraint in your business.
Hmm. Yes, I agree, and Zapier is a very good tool. Actually, also Make, I think it's even easier for someone to start, and I think there are even
Really,
more. So,
I tell everyone to use Zapier at first,
mm-hmm.
and then I use Make because I love Make. That's our
Okay.
go to for all of our automations. But I find that it was harder to pick up, off the shelf. In your experience, it's easier.
For me, it's easier, but maybe,
Huh.
I mean, I'm more technical, so I don't know for a non-technical person which is going to be easier. But that's true that Zapier for me, it's more like you can do more things because you have more connections, as far as I know. But Make is easy for me. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's my personal point of view. Yeah.
I think Make is significantly easier to string together more complex tasks. Like, it's just a better tool, I think, bottom line, especially when you're doing something with multi-steps. Maybe you're just smarter than me, but when I was first picking it up, I was very happy that I learned a little bit of Zapier before Make. So I typically tell people to learn in that order. But if you're using Make.com, that's highly recommended, at least for me.
But anyway, the message is that it's easy to try, to test, and most of these tools have a free version to start with. So it's even interesting to try to automatize a small part of your business, and usually it works well. So then you can ask Garik and his team to do it better for you. So yeah, that's a fantastic approach. So one question is that I will also wanted to ask you is, how do you see the future of AI? Because well, you are passionate about these new technologies coming, but many people are saying that they're going to take our jobs, or this is like going to be the end of humanity, and many things like that. But how do you see, maybe because you might have an optimistic point of view from for AI? So how do you see it?
Yeah, I think that every big problem is really just a stack of tinier problems. Actually, I'm curious, Alejandro, do you want to focus more on that it's going to take our jobs or it's going to kill us all?
I think maybe the most important is that they're not going to kill us, and then that we can continue
Smart.
working on something.
Good answer. It's good to stay. It reminds me of that Hermione line from Harry Potter of like, we're gonna all be killed, or even worse, expelled. um, so my perspective on the alignment problem is that um, two major thoughts. One is that the way we were developing AI is very different than how we were imagining we were developing AI 10 years ago. And so a lot of the scenarios and the thought experiments we were doing with the alignment problem before, I think, really have to be revisited with a pretty critical eye. I think a lot of that is not, if you're at a cocktail party and people are saying the same things, I think generally we need to update our mental map. But most importantly, for me, is that the most convincing argument that AI is going to kill us all was the replicator problem, or like the gray goo, which is to say that any narrow problem, if a superintelligence attacks it, well, one way it's going to solve that narrow problem is going to be taking more resources. So it's going to like boost its own intelligence. So it becomes a gray goo nanomachine, and it consumes all carbon to make more nanomachines, and that's how it solves the problem even better. So that's the replicator or the gray goo problem. If we look, I think though there's parallels in nature to AI. In fact, a lot of AI is just Darwinian evolution with some different parameters. And the way that evolution has built intelligence has not been a gray goo, has not been a replicator. It has been creating different types of intelligence that compete against each other. So humans, for instance, our brains have multiple areas that are responsible for different types of tasks. There's the horny part, the hungry part, the higher part, and all these parts are competing for attention. And out of that, we make the best decisions in the most number of circumstances. It's that friction that provides the precision that we need in our decision making. And so I think that as we will continue to bootstrap intelligence, a big part of that is going to be having multiple intelligences all competing with each other, and we'll have a very heterodox and kind of a kaleidoscope of intelligences, rather than a single type consuming everything else like the Borg. And I think that image is both practically more likely and also leaves a lot more space. It doesn't solve all the problems, but I think it leaves a lot more space and practical problem solving for how humans keep a seat at the table. And I think is definitely a more optimistic view. So that's a pretty abstract answer to a pretty abstract question, but I think it's a really important mental model update.
I keep the point that they are not going to kill us all. So at least some of the more intelligent human are going to be there in the world. But no, but now to be honest, to speak more seriously, I think that it's going to be a more powerful tool that, I mean, the ones that we're used to that, but it's not. It's like, I don't know, guns or something like that that could be used for killing people, but also for many other things that are not maybe bad, like uh, in purpose. So I
Yeah.
mean, it depends the way they are used. And also I usually think on deep fakes, for example, that it's a very complex question related to generative AI. And I remember that one of my best friends, like 10 or 15 years ago, had a problem with a deep fakes even before AI was here. And I mean, because the now maybe the tools are easier and more powerful maybe than before, but bad people existed before, and bad ways of using in technology was there also before. So yeah, so
Oh yeah, the best
I
way to
mean,
learn
we
the
can.
future is we look in the past for sure.
Exactly. So I think it's going to be more or less the same good things, the same bad things, but with more powerful tools. That's more maybe my approach. But now let's talk also about the startups. I will also ask you to give some advices to maybe people that are starting a project, a startup that maybe wants to use want to use AI as a core of the business. So, what's your approach, or what things would you say to them?
To startups that want to be adding AI into their business.
Or, for example, a person that has a dream to start a startup using AI or something like that.
Got it. I give the same piece of advice to anybody who to wants to be working with AI. Maybe they don't know how to code though. They don't exactly know the product and they don't really know where to get started. You know, they're working with ChatGPT. Maybe they pay for it. Maybe they use some plugins, but they don't really know what they can be doing. And my advice is always the same. There's a fantastic tool called OpenAI Playground. So I think it's just if you type in openai.com/playground, you'll end up there. And this is a fantastic, it's a playground, it's a sandbox where it reveals all the hidden variables that make ChatGPT run and gives you much greater control over the prompting. And so if you don't know where to get started, mastering this tool is extremely helpful because every other, there's Jasper, BotPress, Write GPT, all these other tools that are running from tools like ChatGPT are all using this API. And if you dive into the playground and really master it and understand it, you're going to be in a position where you can build products with that. You can build tools with that. And if you use a tool like make.com, you don't even have to code. And you can still learn the stuff. So that's typically the advice that I give and the starting place. I'm actually curious, Alejandro, what advice do you give to folks that are wanting to get started in the industry?
That's a good question, and I'm not used to answer questions in the podcast, so thank you. People usually just say and don't ask to me, but I would say that another good advice would be to learn by doing. That I think
Yeah.
usually we forget, and we think that we need to maybe do another course or study something or read a book or whatever. And I think it's very important to try to try to do it as you said, use make or whatever you want to do, maybe see how you can do it, or even ask ChatGPT how to do it. So maybe you start by
There you
doing
go.
something, and then you learn how the main obstacles are. Then you at this point you have more ideas about what you can do, so you can go further little by little. And I think it's also very important, learning by doing. That's also my advice. Mhm. It's like, for example, the podcast. The first time I did this podcast, I didn't know many things, but I was learning little by little. And obviously, maybe if I continue the podcast in 100 episodes, I will be better, because by doing it's, I think, the best way you can learn. Yes. But
Absolutely.
that's my advice. And also talking about advices, now instead of talking to a person that maybe wants to start a startup or a product, maybe let's focus on a person that is interested on follow your path, your career. Like for example, um, creating a team, working with people, with hiring talent. What would you tell to this person?
Or I tell somebody who's wanting to like follow in my footsteps.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um, I would, the picture that comes in my mind is like a fresh grad from college, or somebody that maybe is very green around the ears. Is that a fair avatar? Or are we talking about someone who's maybe a little more experienced coming from a different domain?
No, no. Go to talk to someone who is starting
Right.
really early. Yeah.
So truly, the advice is, make sure that your life is a good platform to do this kind of stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
the advice is not learn this tool, or do this thing with AI. It's the same way like that I interview. I don't ask, hey, have you built this Zapier integration for XYZ? I don't ask those questions. I ask, do you have an exercise routine? Do you meditate? What's the last book you read? And so, this stuff is moving along so fast. It means the winners are the learners. It's not the domain experts. And so, if you're just getting started out, make turning yourself into just an absolute fucking weapon, that can learn, that can work hard, that can adapt, that's happy, that's healthy. Um, it's a hard life out there, but there's a lot of things you can do that make it a lot easier if you have enough sleep, if you nurture relationships. If you don't have relationships, then start trying to nurture those, and just kind of build a good platform that um, you can live on. And probably physical health, and then who you associate with is the first and foremost things. Assuming that's what they already have, um, I I think some of my greatest perspectives on AI have come from neuroscience, and I would definitely recommend, if someone is looking to replicate whatever success I've generated or I'm generating, to learn about how the brain works. The book The Rise of Superman by Stephen Kotler, I think, is one of the best crash courses on neuroscience anyone can ever read, and it's also really entertaining, and it's all about high performance and how to get your brain at its peak performance. So definitely something there for everyone. Um, and I'll leave it at that.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a good advice, and just, I mean, I'm sure you do, but I need to ask you: do you meditate? Do you do? I mean, do you train yourself often nowadays?
Yeah, I got a friend of mine. Actually, just this month we're starting like 100 push-up challenge. Not anything too, I think, too impressive, because we can spread it out across multiple push-ups. But 100 push-ups every day. That's just an example of getting a friend group that kind of challenges you and pushes you out of your comfort zone. On the meditation, I have for 10 years, and this year I decided to stop putting in the morning routine, because
Mm-hmm.
I want to focus more of the time allocation to working out better. So I've been meditating less this year, but I was actually, funny enough, I was just talking with someone about this earlier, and I think I'm going to re-add it in my night routine, because there is a lot of benefit I've gotten from it, and I've done it for, yeah, like I said, 10 years. So, everyone's a work in progress, but I do feel like I'm on the journey with everyone.
Yes, and actually, I mean, the main thing is the process. So,
Yes.
I mean, you do yourself. You see also your limits. So, yeah, little by little, it's also very very interesting. But it's a very interesting point, actually. Not very often coming to the in the startup world and the and the business world. Usually, um, they are not really taking care of these points that are actually really important also for me, and I think for most of the people, to sleep well, have good relationships, eat correctly, take your time. And I think at the end of the day, even if you work maybe less hours, these hours are going to be much much better. And it's that, for me,
Oh
that's
yeah.
the good point. So, Garik, we are ending the conversation. I have just two questions to finish that you can ask them together. So, the first thing is, how can the audience contact you or your team? Or, I mean, what are the main ways to contact you somehow? And then also, what's your favorite type of coffee? Because, this is the AI Coffee podcast, and coffee is a key point of the podcast. So, let us know also your favorite type.
Well, thank you, Alejandro, and to anyone who would like to contact me, you can just hit me up on LinkedIn. Say Alejandro sent you. Put in a couple coffee emojis, and I'll be sure to accept and let's talk. Specifically, if you are looking for a partner to increase your business's valuation, or you need help building a software application that involves AI, and you want to build a new venture, either way, hit us up and let's see if we can't build things up to then exit from in 2 to 3 years. As far as favorite coffee, I'm a big cream lover in my coffee. I luckily don't have the sugar bug. At least there, I'm definitely a big fan of dessert on some days, but coffee never appealed having the sickly sweet in it. But I do love a very creamy coffee, so a breve latte. Actually, I like bulletproof, where you just mix straight up coconut oil and butter, and blend it all together. Have you heard of that?
No, never. But it
Oh
sounds
God,
fine.
yeah, try that.
Yeah.
It's gotten really popular in some places in the USA.
Hmm.
It was started by Dave Asprey. That was it. Dave Asprey, which is a big health guru that's kind of
Hmm.
blown up. And the idea is that you get better essential fats into your body, which both
Hmm.
cuts down your cravings. So you eat a lot less food throughout the day. Helps you skip breakfast if you want to, which I normally do. And then secondly, it gives your brain all those healthy fats that it really craves and can get you in
Hmm.
ketosis much faster. So that's the logic of it. And if you blend it, put it into a blender, oh god, it's so creamy and delicious. It's really good.
Okay, I will see if in Madrid there we have this kind of coffee. Maybe not, but maybe if I go maybe to Philippines, maybe I will find it. Right?
There's a very few but like new hippie-ish coffee shops. I say
Okay,
hippie coffee shops, but like new new wave, whatever you call them. They sometimes will sell it. Yeah, but we just make
great.
it home. We just have a blender and throw in some
Yes, and
organic butter, and that's that.
mhm. Okay, I will see if there is a recipe in internet. Maybe yeah, sure.
I
There is
can't
going to
believe
have.
it. AI coffee
You can.
podcast, and I gave a new coffee.
Great. Okay, so thank you very much for your time. It was really interesting to talk with you about AI, about your vision, and how AI is not going to kill us all. So yeah, that's fantastic. And I
It's a
hope
good
that
message.
everything, yeah, good message. So I hope you were also fine here.
I definitely enjoyed it. Thank you, Alejandro.
Thank you very much. And also, thank you to you that are listening this time one more week. If you enjoy, please subscribe to the podcast, send it to your friends, your relatives, your colleagues, and see you next time. Bye bye.